You're listening to the Motivated Mindset Podcast with Bobby Stein.
Hey, I'm Zach Hall with MindRxAcademy, and you're listening to the Motivated Mindset Podcast with Bobby Stein.
Perfect. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Motivated Mindset Podcast. And I am your host, Bobby Stein, and I hope that wherever you're watching or listening today that you're doing absolutely amazing. And today, I am fortunate indeed to have as my guest a young man who's really made an impression on me. He's kind of an inspiration, and I haven't yet to talk to him, which we're going to do today. But he's a husband and father of two, as well as an entrepreneur. He's an expert in closing the gap between skill and execution. He's the founder of MindRxAcademy, where his mission is to empower increased performance of the many by healing minds of the one. And he also states, when you win the war of your mind, the daily battles of life become strolls along the beach. So without further delay, let's welcome in and learn more about his philosophy and what all else motivates the mindset of my new friend, Zach Hall. And thanks for tuning in. Zach, how are you, my brother?
Hey, I'm doing great. I feel even better after that awesome introduction. How are you? It's good to be here.
Thanks, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a very busy guy. And you said you hail from Arizona.
Yeah, hail from Arizona. I mean, I've lived here since I was 8, grew up, went away for a bit. We came back about 10 years ago with my family, which is actually now a father of 3. I have 3 sons. As of a year ago, our last baby came to fruition. So
congratulations. How's mom doing in the new edition? Everybody's healthy and happy?
Everybody's healthy. Is a bit of a miracle story. We can dive into that another time maybe, but yeah, everyone's healthy and happy, and he's growing and progressing, and not a great sleeper, but he's the most adorable, cheerful little baby. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah. I love kids. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 grandchildren, 10 and 7, and awesome. And yeah, it's amazing.
Great
one thing I'll share with you though is that the time just evaporates. Okay. So really soak this in. If you've invented a time machine, or where you can purchase or rent one, do so, because it's fleeting time.
Oh yeah. I believe we just looked at I think it was like last month, my wife and I, we both had moments independent where we looked at our oldest and we were like, who the heck is this kid? Like, he's so different. He's grown so fast. So I believe you for sure. That's good note. Yeah. I'll take that.
That's my word of wisdom in my advanced age. Take me back. Now, I first heard of you. I stumbled across your podcast. I'm a big podcast listener, and I like audiobooks and things of that nature. On Stephen Cohen, his podcast, the Millennial Millionaire.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued with the chat because of your and he's kind of that same bent, Stephen, is where mindset means everything. But what I'd like you to do, if you could, is take me back to the beginning, because I know you went to university, correct? And you studied to become a doctor, but then there was something in course correction that took you along a different path. Can you get me started and tell the audience about that?
Yeah. Let's see. So I did. I studied undergraduate degree, major in professional biology, minored in biochem. I was a pretty good student. I did a year of medical school, actually. But between the undergraduate year and the year of medical school, we were actually moving from Hawaii. So I went to BYU, Hawaii. And so when we moved back, we didn't have anything, right? And so I had a short summer before medical school started and had gotten recruited to go try and sell alarms. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Go make some quick cash. We can buy furniture. That'd be good to have some furniture when we're going into medical school. And so I did that, and I did a summer of alarms, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And in the second month, the switch finally flipped. I almost threw in the towel, decided no, I committed for a summer, go through it. And that finally started clicking, and I saw the potential of that kind of direct sales life, but it was too nomadic. They lived out of their market. I already had a wife and a kid at the time. That wasn't for me. So I'm like, no, stay the course, go to medical school. And then, flash forward, long story short, after the year of medical school, it was in California, where my wife's from. We were closer to her family. But even with a small scholarship and I even got a tutoring job while in school. We maxed out the student loans. It wasn't enough. Like they wouldn't lend us anymore unless my wife got a job and they would lend us more to pay for daycare. But we're very traditional. We wanted to have someone home. I was gone all the time studying. So we got to the end of the year and we were like, man, we even need to borrow money to finish this year, like from family. And I'm like, I called my buddy who I had done the alarms with. I said, I have 5 weeks between first and second year. I got to sell as many alarms as possible. And he said, well, I'm not doing alarms anymore. I'm doing solar in Arizona. I'm like, I'm from Arizona. Let's do that. Yeah. Tell me about the solar thing. So 5 weeks of solar, we did well. Didn't quite make it, like the goal would have been, but I saw much more potential. So I talked to my wife and others and said, what if we gave this a year, we save up money, then we go back, we'd be able to save up more and enough to like avoid that debt ceiling again. And 1 year became 10. So, never went back. I fell in love with the product. I thought residential solar was awesome, especially at the time. And I felt like we were creating our life now as opposed to going further into debt, just to put it off for another, 3 more years plus 3 years of residency, 6+ years before we'd really start our life. And so, that was kind of the journey there in terms of the scholastic to the more entrepreneurial spirit.
Gotcha. So walk me through that, the alarms and the solar, it's a direct sales gig, right?
Yeah. Knock on doors. Hello.
Okay. So you're knocking on doors. I spent a season, quite a long season in the car business, right? Okay. To cut my selling chops and cut my teeth on that. One thing, and I'm sure you can attest, I want you to speak to the importance of it. How significant is it to build and have the ability to build that instant rapport? Because when you're sitting on somebody's door and they're not expecting you, I would imagine that you must run into all kinds of stuff. How you have that split second to kind of gain their trust? How did you go about that?
It's funny and it's evolved a lot, right? But you're right. Like you're never expected. Even sometimes when you had an appointment, they were like, we didn't set an appointment. So you would catch some unexpected things then too. No, so you're asking, how do you build rapport quickly?
Or what's the significance of it, and how do you build it? Because I know for me, and it took a real quick minute, right, to understand the fact that if you didn't just get them to a comfort level and vice versa and put everybody on a level playing field, you were just at a severe disadvantage and the sale would evaporate before it had legs.
So it is super vital. And any time you're in a sales position, if they recognize it as a sales scenario, you generate, or I should say the person, so let's call it the prospect generates a feeling of resistance just because we're sold to all the time. It's not, and because of maybe what sales has done in the past or previous experiences that person has had with sales, they trigger resistance if that's what they think it is. But picture the mind like a Broadway play can only really present with one actor at a time. So if resistance is on the stage, you could say you could have the best product, the best company, you could have everything in your corner. But if resistance is on the stage, if that's the emotion that they're feeling, they're not even going to listen to you. They're just waiting for the opportunity to push away because they're presenting from resistance. Does that make sense so far?
Absolutely.
So the first goal is to replace the emotion that the prospect is feeling. And in the initial interaction, it's not so much, I think, even on rapport as much as it is on curiosity. That's the emotion I go for. If I can make someone curious, or I can at least influence curiosity, then resistance walks off the stage, curiosity takes center stage, and now it's a back and forth conversation, which is what a sales professional longs for.
Absolutely. I love the way you paint that picture. It's really a nice visual.
I should say I did just the other day, I went knocking and this person had strange chairs. So there's always, like, you ask how, a lot of times there's just having fun with it. And if you're having fun, you're more likely to invoke fun. But she had these weird chairs and she opened the door. I'm like, this is going to be weird, but could I sit in this? And she's like, sure. It's like, I just couldn't tell if they're comfortable or not. And I wanted to find out. She's like, yeah, sure. And then that led to a whole really good conversation. You know, you call it an icebreaker or whatever, but really what it is you're interrupting what they think, from thinking you're a salesperson to thinking more like you're a human, or what are you doing? If you can create those thoughts, they're going to replace resistance with either curiosity or some kind of connection.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, you pick up on those cues, the visual cues, and I'm sure you want to do some mirror and modeling and do the whole, the whole aspect of everything. You went into you were in that solar industry for a hot minute and thriving and doing well, I understand. But then all of a sudden there was a dark season that took place where there was a transition that shifted. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to share that with me, because I think that's vital to your story.
Yeah, it's a very pivotal point. So 1 year in, remember, med school was still on the table. So the idea was save up money, go back to med school. And we get a year into it where we have a good amount saved, like we've pretty much solved the problem of that debt ceiling. And my manager at the time is like, you shouldn't go back. We should just promote you. So I had been doing well. I had decent, consistent volume, high realization rate, which is a big thing in solar. A lot of people cancel. I had figured that out. And so it's like, we should just promote you, make you an assistant manager. You're already helping all the people. Let's pay you for it. And then I was like, well, let's consider this, right? Like, maybe this is a career. Start life now. And so I took the job. I was like, well, call med school. You get 6 years to do the 4. So we put that on hold, 1 more year. And then as we were approaching the end of the second year, now it's decision time. It's like, is this the life, or are you going back? And there was a lot of prayer. I'm a religious, spiritual person. I believe in God. I prayed a ton, and I ultimately decided, let's stay. We have 2 boys now. Let's stay. Let's build our life. Like, the money can be the same. In fact, I can earn more if I keep getting better. Let's stay. And right after that, I got promoted to a regular manager. So I was an assistant. Now I'm a district manager. I lead a whole team. It was a dream job. I'm like teaching people.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a teacher, right? But teachers don't make enough money. They're undervalued. So I'm like, here, I'm making great money. I'm teaching people. I'm helping them earn more money. This is amazing. 2 months after that. So I should say, I thought that was confirmation to prayer. Like, my mind was like, I prayed, I said, I'm staying, I got promoted. What more confirmation could you ask for? 2 months later, we got fired. Everyone got fired.
How you doing?
Yeah. And I'm like, God, what happened here? I thought this was the path. Now I'm fired. And, so, flash forward, obviously hindsight, you have much more clarity. I didn't realize it at the time, but I started questioning. Again, I didn't realize this. This wasn't a conscious thought process, that I was like not wanted, right? So I started questioning whether I was wanted. We got pushed to another company. I landed laterally as a manager there, even had a small team to work with to start on. And did okay first month, but over time, my performance started to suffer, and therefore the income, starts to suffer. It's direct sales. We were commission only.
Yeah.
And you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, what's wrong with me? Now the questions are, what's wrong with me? And you start doubting yourself. So now self-doubt's creeping in. When you pay off of sales, like, confidence is key. And I could work twice as hard and I just couldn't generate this. I would get half the results.
No.
And when you're used to earning, plus 200,000 or whatever, and you get cut in half, thankfully the industry pay was going up. Like, it's still $100,000 at that time. You would have thought that's still great, but you're now a father of multiple. You're used to living that way. Like, things got real tight, real fast. And I then started feeling like I was failing at everything. So now it was like, not just self-doubt. It was like, do you even got this anymore? It was like, you suck. And that was the language going through my head. Like, you're failing. You're failing as a father. You're failing as a provider. You're failing as a husband. You're failing as a spiritual leader. I had a church calling that I was not showing up for. And yeah, you get to a point where it was like loathing. Like, I loathed myself. Sorry. So those were what I call now like the dark years. And I don't know how, like, you start questioning whether it's worth going on. Like, and maybe like I had an insurance, this is part of the story. Like, I had an insurance policy that I set up while I was doing well. And I was like, well, this would probably be worth more than me being around.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to say, but like, that's where the thought process goes. It was like a cut of 1,000 knives until you realize, like, well, what if you just do a really good cut? And then the family has $1 million plus, So that's where it got.
So all that, that's incredible. And that loathing and that self-doubt, your thoughts, your self-talk, and what's really, what's hurtful to you is, you're a man of faith, and here you thought you had answered prayer and you're on the correct path. And then you all of a sudden you're getting hit with so many lefts, you're begging for a right, and you're leaning on that option that could have been there, the life insurance policy, which is, I'm so thankful, and I'm sure you are and your family is as well, that you didn't go that route. The mind is.
You put that, like, you wouldn't mind another hit, just make it a different one.
Yeah, exactly.
I like.
Come on, show what.
Yeah.
But it's insane how the mind takes a life of its own. Now, you were still within that industry, but it was with a different company.
Yes.
How long did you stay in the game, and what righted the ship for you, for lack of a better word? How'd you come to grips with a new mindset? Yeah,
and that's the question I love. So everyone's been through mud. Everyone's been through dark. Like, maybe mine doesn't sound so bad. Maybe and frankly, I think you have your own worst thing. And I would never trade someone's setbacks for my own, like, because they make them who they are, and this has made me who I am, and I now love who I am. So the shift started. Well, sorry. First question. I was with them for 2 more years. I would say about 18 months of it was. And again, it's not the company's fault. It was my own thinking about what had happened that I loathed it. And so I was with them for about 2 years, 18 months. I was beating myself up. And then what happened was, we had some really good friends. And there was this guy, Bob Proctor, the name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very familiar.
Mindset guru, right? Like The Secret.
Just lost him a couple years ago.
Yeah,
unfortunately. Yeah,
crazy. Because he looked like he could go forever.
Unbelievable. Real quick, as a sidebar, I just love his teaching. He would always carry around a copy of Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill, and read it, reread it, dog-eared it, underlined it, highlighted it, etc. And but yeah, love his teaching.
60 years reads that book every day.
Yeah, literally. And there's a lesson in that. I mean, not for nothing. I've got this book, and you mentioned it at the Stevens.
Yes. Yeah.
This is a 30-year-old copy, and I still refer to it. We'll get into it in a second. But yeah, so you had some friends, and you mentioned Bob Proctor.
Yeah. So we had been searching, right? Like, for any kind of, how can we right the ship, like you said? How can we get back on track? And, I call it the universe or whatever, starts pushing Bob Proctor on us. And then a friend of ours who had launched a business doing like hair extensions, she had just read this book called The Jackrabbit Factor, which is it's written by the student, one of Bob's students. Leslie Householder is her name. And we took a trip to visit. I think it was spring break. Yeah, spring break. took a trip to visit her family in California. So we're driving over there and we read the book on the way there and back. And I start implementing what it's teaching. So this is a really phenomenal book too. It's told in like allegory. So it's a metaphor for success, but a really good story. And I start applying it and immediately I start feeling better. Yeah. Production didn't come right away, but immediately I start feeling better. I start thinking more clearly. And then some miracles start to happen. It would take a long time to tell that, but some miracles started happening. I'm like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And so then my wife like enrolled in this Bob Proctor. She hit something about like getting coached by Bob or something like that, like one of those ads online. And she filled it out for me. And so then I got a call from a sales rep or whatever representing the Proctor Gallagher Institute. Mm-hmm. And I was like, at the time, I was like, this has helped me so much already. Just applying the book, I got to do this for other people. Yeah. So instead of just getting coached, I signed up with money I didn't have, which is there's maybe a lesson there, but I signed up to become one. I was like, teach me everything so that I can do this for people. Yeah. And so that sparked the initial, what has now become MindRxAcademy. But that shift, just applying those principles from the book and then investing in and learning from Bob directly for about 6 months and a little bit after. That was what righted the ship. I didn't leave the solar industry, actually. Like, that timing was right when COVID happened. So solar actually took off at that time, and it kept me busy, and I didn't give it the full time and attention but it was always gnawing at me. It's like, you got to do this, you got to dive in. And last year, April, I went full time completely. I left solar completely, and I went full time into this.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that further because I think it's an intriguing story thus far. You know, when you had mentioned that book, the Jackrabbit, what is it?
Jackrabbit Factor. Yeah.
I went on. I walk around my subdivision each day, and much to my dermatologist's chagrin, I got the audio book, Elizabeth, and it's narrated by her husband. And based on your testimony of the book, I bought it and I listened to it when I walk incessantly, along with other books. And I love the way it was told in allegorical form. It's like a corny, cheesy kind of story, but it really hits home. Yeah. And the husband narrating it, you really buy into the whole story. I'm intrigued. You got to work with Bob, and you have this teaching kind of like bent, right? You feel like that's your calling. And so based on your training and your coaching and you're absorbing all this material, you want to be able to serve the people with a similar type of message and help them out of their dark spots, etc. How did that all come about? Where did MindRxAcademy, where did the name come from? And take me through that as well, if you would.
Okay. Because there's an interesting story in there too. I had come to the conclusion, I was like, I want to do this. And so I was in there learning how to coach as well as being taught all this stuff, right? And the principles that they teach and all those concepts and strategies. And they also share with you, like, build a business. So I did a home event. I had people come over. That totally flopped. I had like 3 out of like 50 invites or whatever. But I recognize that I have some power in my friend group, right? And so there was this person I knew that her and her husband worked on like marketing, like they did marketing type stuff. And I just felt impressed to go run over to their house after this meeting flopped, run over their house, because she had gotten like TikTok famous, TikTok. She had like had a video go viral, and she was actually helping other companies do that. And I felt impressed, like, go talk to her about it. I knocked on the door, and they were like, and I told my idea. I was like, I need help getting my message out. And she was like, we were just talking about you. that you have a great voice and we're watching your videos on Instagram, but you need someone to get it out there. I'm like, yeah. And so that was the initial start of it. At the time, I was only thinking about social media. I called it Think It, Be It, Have It. It's actually the bank account that I set up, which has a nice ring to it, right? Think it, you'll be it, and that's how you have it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, as we were talking and stuff, I'm like, that's not a great company name. So we all brainstormed, and I don't even remember who came up with it. If it was them, I want to give them credit. I can't remember, but I have the medical school background. And
RX,
so we're talking about the mind, and it became clear, like MindRx. And the vision is actually to build the education of this going forward and to train other coaches, which we just launched. We have our first batch of coaches coming through where we're training them in the same style that I use. And so we looked for what would work well with MindRx and came across Academy. We're like, okay, MindRx Academy, MindRxa, solid, here we go. Funny enough, just a year or two ago, this is after we officially came up with a name, I drive down a street I must have been on tons of times, and I see this clinic called MindRx Clinic. I'm like, oh, shit.
Damn it.
Good thing I call it Academy. So there's not another Academy, but apparently there's more MindRx's out there.
Yeah.
Our hats had to shift from just MindRx, now it says MindRx Academy, but I guess I might have seen that without realizing it, and maybe that's where it came
subconsciously, yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
I love how you felt compelled after the perceived flop of the house meeting, and you felt compelled to knock on a door. I don't believe in accidents, right? Everything happens, I mean, there's an origin, there's a cause for every effect. So, whatever compelled you to go over there, and they were no coincidence, they were chatting about you.
Absolutely. Yeah, like seriously.
You can't forecast that stuff. And when it happens, it sends you goosebumps. You get the shivers. You're like, holy crap, there's more to this realm than meets the eye.
Yeah, and so the lesson there is, if you have an idea, why not act on it? Right? Like, sure, you could push it aside. That would mean nothing changes. Right? But if you have an idea and you act on it and nothing comes of it, cool, nothing changes. But if there's an idea and you act on it, it could be the springboard, right, to everything that you've wanted to create. And I think, and I again, being a believer in this, I believe when those promptings come, the more you follow them, the more likely they will continue to come. You're tuning in to receive more of that direction. Versus if you push it aside and you don't act on it and you're like, I'll get to it later, you're basically saying, hey, I've been praying for help, but don't help me. Like, it's a
exactly
of communication. Yeah,
it really is. And I love that there's a visual that I read long ago, and it's, birds of a feather flock together. But when you resonating thoughts, okay, so if you have a tuning fork in the corner of a room and one in the other corner of the room, maybe 20, 30 feet away, and you strike the one, if you go over and look at the other one, it's vibrating in sympathetic resonance to this one. So, there's quantum entanglement, there's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think the promptings, and if we push them away or ignore them, Zach, a lot of times I think they go away, right? Hey, if you're not grateful for what you have, that what you have, so I'm going to take away. You're not a good steward of it, essentially.
100%.
So
100%. Yeah. Show your gratitude by what you do with it, right? By how you treat it. Thank you for this prompting. I'm going to act on it. It might mean crazy stuff happens, but you have guidance, right? Like, you have the guidance.
And how many of us, and how many folks, right? They're looking for that sign or whatever, and it's smacking them in the face.
Right there.
I am talking and speaking with Zach Hall. He is the founder of MindRx Academy. You can find him at MindRxAcademy.com. Of course, on the Instagram platform, TikTok. He's all over the socials. Check him out. You'd be glad you did. He offers one-on-one coaching, group coaching, just an intriguing story. He loves to talk mindset, thoughts. And Zach, tell me about the importance and the significance of thoughts and thought lives, and what goes on between, behind our eyeballs and between our ears. What's the importance of that?
So it's funny, something Bob would often talk about he would teach how you could ask a well-known, like if you could go back in time and talk to Socrates and Plato and the Caesars and everyone who's known for like thought leaders, right? Abraham Lincoln even. They would all disagree on most stuff, but they would all have one thing that they agree on, which is that we become what we think about. You see it everywhere, right? And so you have to dive into that. If every person is saying, even people who would disagree on other stuff, if they agree that we get what we think about, we become what we think about, then you have to dive into the power of thought. Like you owe that to yourself. And so this actually led to even further. I mean, Bob taught it as well, but it actually led to a unique. It's called the Life Coach School. Brooke Castillo founded it. Have you heard of that?
I have not. Who was it?
The Life Coach School. So my wife went through that training, and then we have access to it. And so I've actually kind of molded together Proctor Gallagher with Life Coach School, and then my own medical background and stuff, and put it all together. That's what makes it a little bit different. But she had this framework for helping people see their own thinking becoming reality. And it's one of the most powerful things that I teach. And because it's so practical, you can use it for everything. You can literally see on paper in front of you how what you thought literally produced the result. And now it's a perfect mirror, and you can't blame the event or the circumstances anymore because you're the only one responsible for what you chose to think. And so we rely heavily on that. I could walk you through it. It's a really simple, there's just 5 things. You classify anything that takes place, energy around you, as 5 things. You ready?
I'm ready, brother.
Okay,
Hit me.
so you have to learn how to label them. So it'll take a deep dive, but you have circumstances. These are the things that take place. Okay, so this is outside of you. That's the external, right? Then you have thought. Circumstances trigger our thoughts. And a thought is a single sentence in the mind, right? So indistinct sentences, not indistinct, distinct sentences, separate one from another. Each thought you think, circumstance, thought, each thought you think will generate a feeling, right? Like right now, think about the greatest achievement that you've accomplished. While you're listening to this, go into your head, replay that video of you accomplishing some great thing. And as you see it, what do you notice you feel? Right? You're feeling confident. You're feeling accomplished. You're feeling proud, right?
Achievement,
Versus if I got you to think about how you just got, canceled, or an appointment canceled on you, or your spouse was wanting to leave you or something like that. And now I'm drawing thoughts that have a completely different feeling. Nothing's changed externally. We're only changing what we're focusing on, and we're generating a different feeling. That's very important, and most people miss this. They think getting cut off on the freeway is why they feel frustrated. But it's because they chose to think that the person cutting them off was a jerk. That's why you feel frustrated. You could think, my wife actually taught me this one, why don't you think that they're rushing to the hospital because they're about to have a baby? Ever since I've chosen to believe that, I never feel angry.
You don't have issues in traffic. Yeah.
No, never. I used to. I was like, never since, right? Okay, so that's the 3. Circumstance, thought, feeling. And feelings are one word. It's a single word. In fact, this is really important. It's the best definition I've heard about what feeling or emotion is. It's a single word used to describe the conscious awareness of the vibration that our body is in. So everything vibrates. Our body is vibrating. It's made up of cells. They vibrate. They have energy. The feeling is a word we use to describe the vibration, whether it's confidence or shame, happiness or sadness, right? So every thought I think has a feeling attached to that it generates. The feeling drives both the type, I'm not going to be good at this, the type and quality of my actions. It's not just the type of action, but it's the quality of that action. Many times I'll coach people and they're disciplined individuals. So even though they feel like crap, they still go out and do the work. They still go knock on the doors. They still go make the sales calls. But the energy behind it is defeat, is hopelessness. And that carries through in the way they sound, in the questions they ask, and how good they are in their approach.
Absolutely.
So the quality of action is messed up. They have the right type of action, but the quality is interfering. And so then that action, the type and quality of action dictates the type and quality of result. What you put out is what comes back. The same quality you put out is the same quality you're able to receive. You create space for that receiving. And so that's the model. That is our mindset model. Circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. You can tell me anything. I can plug it into there, and I can show you how what you think creates your results.
I love this stuff. I mean, I absolutely love it. I love vibration, frequency. Earl Nightingale's an old time. He was amazing.
Earl taught Bob.
What's that?
Earl taught Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so he was his mentor. He was a radio host, and he's just amazing. His voice was incredible.
Great.
And he was reading Think and Grow Rich, and he finally came upon that we become what we think about most of the time, and it really does negate an individual's opportunity to lean on being a victim.
Yes.
And I think a lot of folks. And, when I had taken that shift some 35, 40 years ago, and I started to get into what we're talking about right now, I had that victim mentality. If it was meant to be, it was up to me. But by the same token, I'd let outside circumstances dictate my moods, feelings, subsequent actions, and results. So I just, if more people, would just really come to themselves, that realization, the sky is the limit. And I like your comparison. And how your wife addressed it too, by the fact that, she might be rushed to the hospital. They might have a wedding cake in the back that's 5 stories tall, and they can't turn the corner fast.
We got stuff melted back here, yeah.
So that's incredible. So I'm glad you addressed that. I love the model, the 5.
Yeah. So just 5. I'll give you like real circumstance. I've coached people through it where they think that the leader isn't supporting them, right? Like. They ask for their leader's help, and the leader doesn't respond. First of all, most people's circumstances, that C line, the very first thing, most people are actually not stating the fact. The circumstance has to be fact. They're messing it up with their own bias and perspective.
It's skewed, yeah.
Yeah. So most people's circumstances are actually thoughts. That's one of the most powerful things you can see. Like
that is huge, yeah.
Yeah, if like person cut me off. That's not fact. I'm using a descriptive term to say that the person cut me off in the freeway, right? Cut me off. What do you mean by cut me off? There's bias there, right? So what I'd have to say to label it truly as a circumstance is that another driver moved in front of me with limited space. Like I'd have to make it as clear as possible. And then when that happened, I thought, you cut me off, you jerk. That made me feel frustration, right? You see the flow?
Yep.
But many times just by clearly labeling what happened as fact and taking all the bias out, you gain such a clear perspective that, this is my own story about it. It's not even what happened and I'm wrong on it. It helps you become more open to like being wrong about other things. So I'd have a guy say that like my leader's not supporting me. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, I call them and they take 3 days to get back to me. Okay, so put that in. You call, they respond 3 days later. That's the circumstance. What do you think about? And they're like, they don't support me. How do you feel when you think that they don't support you? I feel, ashamed.
Rejected.
Yeah, rejected. And I'm like, well, when you feel rejected, what do you typically do? He's like, I isolate and I hide. And I'm like, okay, so you do less of the work and you're isolating and you go on like a bar somewhere or whatever. So can you see how the result you're creating is that you're not supporting you? And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm blaming my leader and it's my own fault. It's so powerful. It's so powerful.
The other thing is too, if you choose to continue to subject yourself to that environment, if in fact it does have weight and, it carries validity, Well, that's a you problem too. You got to.
Yeah.
There's a couple other things I'd like to ask you about, and the importance. Yeah, if you have a moment.
Yeah.
The importance of visualization. I alluded to this book earlier because you alluded to it on Stephen Cohen's podcast, The Millennial Millionaire, and it says something in here, and I always highlight the nugget, that I perceive to be the nugget. It says here, in short, Maxwell Maltz, talking from Psychocybernetics, in short, you are going to use goal pictures, GOAL, goal pictures held in imagination, and let your automatic mechanism realize those goals for you. Visualization, affirmation, visualization and affirmation. Speak to that.
Ooh, okay. Well, what specifically? Because there's whole books written on the thing. There
really is. Okay, so if I have an objective in mind, I was taught that to see the end from the beginning, right, and not necessarily the processes that lead up to that end. Right. Because all the obstacles are going to rear their head, and subsequently I'm going to be shot in the foot before I get off the jump street.
Well said.
So if I see myself in the end, and this is for a goal or objective, how would I feel? Who would be around me? What would validate the fact that I've achieved said goal?
Right.
And who would congratulate me? All those things. And if I live in that end, if I assume the wish fulfilled, that assumption will harden into fact.
Right. Okay. So just my take on it and how I use
just your take on it. Yeah. I want to hear what Zach Hall, so if you were to implement that, I guess it's case by case basis, but if you had a student, a coaching client that was he had this objective that he's looking to reach. And he said, Zach, I'm kind of, and you pulled out of your holster or your arsenal of tools, visualization.
Yeah.
How would you steer him if that makes sense?
And I do a lot. So I really like what you said. All the obstacles and stuff rear their head. When people focus on the how, they paralyze themselves into inaction, right?
I agree.
Because you don't know how.
Right.
But that's not your job to know how. You discover how.
Thank you.
By going forward, right? So visualization is meant to invoke the idea that you have an automatic creative mechanism. We, as human beings, we're actually a little bit different than most other animals created that live on this planet, that we can actually create and visualize before a thing has taken place, which means we have power over our environment instead of just being subject to it. If we choose to live into that power. What I mean is this: an animal primed to survive and duplicate, right? Okay. If you do not set an intention, if you do not have a goal or a target, the automatic mechanism's successful target becomes the default setting, which is survive and duplicate.
Right.
Just like all the other creatures, right? So why it's important to have a goal, even if you don't know how to do it, and to spend time, as you said, seeing it realized, visuals of it actually happening, congratulations from loved ones, what the environment would look like. By doing that, you're changing the setting from the automatic creative mechanism within you that the mind operates on. You're changing that from survival to creation. It now has a specific thing that it can work towards. And then the fun part is you actually just go to work, you get out of the way, and the how starts to reveal. You start meeting people that you would not have met or even known, right? Like MindRx, seeing it on the street. I don't know how many times I've driven by that, but it didn't become real until I moved towards making my own thing, right? So
exactly,
absolutely. So the way I work it is I help them figure out what it is that they want. The typical distinguishing factor is it should be outside the realm of what you know how to do. If we're talking a real picture here, a real goal to move towards that's gonna light you up. It's about something that you want that's outside the realm of what you know is possible, because you have to think differently to create it.
Yeah.
And so you have to think outside of what you currently think, and that's the starting place. And then we just talk about building that picture, and we make it clear, and then I have them write it down.
I love that. It's so practical, so pragmatic. And I really appreciate, and the fun and the juice in it for me whenever I set out to do a new endeavor is that how's this going to happen? Well, I don't know. That's not my job. Take my hands off the wheel. There's a fictitious author, who wrote a fictitious book. He was in the futures and the trading game and commodities, wrote about 40 years ago. Roberts, his name, I forget his name. But he wrote this fictitious story, and it was all about a struggling youngster who just wanted to make it in the world. And he ran into a mentor who was a gazillionaire. And the advice that he gave to him was such that he said, take the first step, no more, no less. And the next step will be revealed to you. So it was a real faith walk. Yeah. And it's kind of, I liken it to a dartboard. Like if you're aiming for the bullseye and you throw the dart, well, if you miss the bullseye, the dartboard is going to give you the feedback, right? Move up, left, right, left. So I'm sorry.
I was going to say Steve Jobs, right? You can't connect the dots looking forward. You connect them looking
only back. Yeah.
You have to have the end in mind, and then the mechanisms and the abilities that you have, the creative faculties that make you a human being, will work to create that. Nice. There's divineness in you, and that will come out as you take those steps. I like how you said, take the step, the next one gets revealed, which means the next one doesn't get revealed until you take the first one.
So the onus, it's incumbent upon us as travelers and wayfarers to take that first step.
Yeah.
And that so intrigues me, and I love how and you can equate it to that reticular activating system, right, at the cortex at the base of our brain there, where when we set out for something, that kind of filters everything out, and it shows us all of a sudden, i.e. the MindRx clinic was there all along.
Yeah.
But you never, on some level, one of your senses took it in, but you couldn't apply it or compare it to what you had just came up with in terms of the name Academy. So.
Right. Like you want to start a podcast, the ability has always been there. People just had to figure out how to do it, but they wouldn't have figured out how to do that if someone didn't have the idea. Let's do some kind of like recording thing that gets broadcasted. Like, starts with the idea, you take a step forward, everything starts to materialize because it's already there. Everything
you look in your visual sight, and as you well know, and I'm sure the audience too, was first an idea in somebody's mind.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that hinders or really kind of stifles the creativity process is a big one for a lot of people, and I struggle with it. Fear. And I know you have a unique relationship with fear. It's an unusual one, but it's worthy to speak of because I think everybody can glean a little something about that unique relationship with fear.
Yeah, we're becoming best friends. Is that what we're talking about? It's this. It's interesting. You were meant to be afraid of stuff. Fear is almost one of these indulgent emotions. It's a feeling that you have that prevents you from taking action. So you have to recognize that there was reason for that. If you walk outside of your cave way back in the day, you could have you could be killed right away. So fear tells you don't go down the dark hallway. It's actually a useful emotion. But the problem is people don't like how it feels, and so they try to avoid it. And if avoiding fear keeps you where you are, then it becomes pretty clear that if you can buy into it, if you can lean into fear and be willing to feel it and embrace it like a friend and be like, we got this, then wow, what could you accomplish? What type of life would you live into if you were willing to feel fear and say, hey, thanks for showing up, buddy, let's go, right? Like it just changes what you're willing to attack. And that makes life more living, like you're actually living. You're not trying to avoid the life. That emotion itself was there for a purpose. You're meant to feel it. And we spend most of our time trying to avoid emotions that we're meant to feel because they don't feel good. But what if they did start to feel good? I'm not saying go crazy, but what if you were willing to, what if you were willing to feel discomfort? What if you were willing to feel rejection? What if you were willing to feel, shame or disappointment? No, that would mean
Embrace it.
Yeah, that would mean that you're moving forward at a faster pace than most people do, and that would mean that you're living life more at a higher degree than most people do.
Yeah.
So that's where that relationship kind of come in with like, okay, well, if avoiding it keeps me the same, then if I feel it, then I'm on to something.
Well, I think, and I like your perspective, embrace it, right? I mean, have it become your best friend. I think we're born with two fears. It's loud noises and falling. I think so much of our exposure to daily life from infants, how we're programmed.
Yeah.
And, we're programmed. Many of us don't even understand or realize that we are being programmed. But the minute that we have that epiphany that, okay, we are, we're watching television and, it's like a constant din in the background and we're hearing it and stuff like this. It's just slowly seeping in. The epiphany for me is when I realized that I had the ability to change my programming and thus the circumstances, the feelings, the actions, the results, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And how important is it to really feed your mind and feed your soul with garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah. Input, output,
Input, output, yeah.
So that mechanism that's automatically creating your targets, whether you're setting them or not setting them, right? Survival or creation.
Yes.
The mechanism that's automatically creating it only has what you let in to operate on. So if you want your creative mechanism to like do really awesome things, you're going to need that information coming in so it can have that data to create with, right? But if all you're ever consuming is, and this was actually a tough one for me for a while. This is more recent, but like sports, like I watch you watch a ton of sports. I love sports. Sports help make me who I am, but now it's at a point where it's consuming. And if it's not like I'm trying to be a professional sport player. Like, why am I consuming it at that level? Versus instead of that, what if I took in information on building a business? What if I took in information on empowering other people? What if I took in information on the mind itself and how to create? That helps me towards what I can create. So let's let that be more of the input that
prevalent.
I get. Yeah, my mechanism has that to work with.
More of your diet. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think what's the latest saying? I think doom scrolling.
Yeah.
And I find myself falling victim to that. I'm like, all of a sudden I got drool coming out. I'm like, look at this.
An hour goes by. You're like, what happened?
Well, speaking at the time, in terms of what happened, I mean, that's just it, and the older I get, it's the days just zing by. Mm-hmm. I don't have the time, and I'm a big avid sports fan. I played sports and I love it, but I could sit there on an NFL Sunday and, it goes from college football Saturday into Sunday to Monday night football to Thursday night football. And the next thing you know, I'm a vegetable. Right. And I haven't really gleaned anything or fed my soul or my mind anything useful. So
right, 100%. You got to be careful with it. Choose your input. You'll choose your output.
You'll experience your output. Yeah.
There you go. That's better said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a wonderful tool that rests upon our shoulders, and if we can only realize and harness it, and there's so many that went before us as examples and teachers, we just need to avail ourselves of that information. So much of it, Zach, is free. You don't have to doom scroll, but if you want to find something and seek it out, you got YouTube, you got so many things, Wikipedia. Now you have ChatGTP. You can ask anything. They scour the internet and give you, answers at their fingertips. So
boom.
Crazy times we live in.
Yeah, and I'd even say too, everything that I teach, everything that I try to help people with to unlock them and to help them execute more in alignment, it's all out there. You could find it. It is free. There's books written about it. Go find it. But there's a difference where I put my work in, and maybe something similar for yourself is in the conversation. If you are in your own story, you can't see outside of that story. It's very challenging. I know this stuff. I still have to go to a coach to help me get the perspective shifts on my own stories. So that's where our work comes in, is helping people get out of their own way faster so that they can create what they want more effectively.
Limiting beliefs and all that kind of stuff. I like the word unlock.
Yeah, that's fun.
Wow. Well, man, I'll tell you what a fun episode. I could, it's a shame we're not closer. I'd like to take you out to dinner and just hang out and watch some football, and then
I'd be down. Talk mind, watch it played, watch the sport played. Yeah, talk the mind a bit, have some good food. Well, if you ever come to Arizona, I'm in the East Valley. If I ever get to
likewise,
let you know.
You definitely have to look me up for sure. Well, that's a wrap, folks. And Zach, I appreciate your time and your nuggets of wisdom. You gave everybody some awesome gems to consider, and I'm so grateful for that. I love that you're a man of faith. I love that you're a student of the mind. And I'll be reaching out to you offline after the fact. But folks, you have been listening to another episode of the Motivated Mindset Podcast with Zach Hall. Be sure you reach out. Now, if you have any, he just alluded to it regarding everything's out there free and available, but it's in the context and it's in the way that it's presented and prepared. Zach takes his time. He does a discovery so that, you are priority number one. You or your group, your company, if you have a team of leaders or professionals that you want to get coached up and trained up with a certain objective, Zach will be able to help you with your outline and then implementation. Look him up on TikTok, on Instagram, and over at MindRxAcademy. And for Zach Hall, I'm Bobby Stein saying thanks for watching, thanks for listening in your ear holes, and please, folks, take good care. Zach, you are a rock star, brother.
Hey, right back at you. It's been awesome, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'll check in with you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to another episode of the Motivated Mindset Podcast with your host, Bobby Stein. Thank you for tuning in.